Nice to be here and very happy to represent my department here. My presentation going to be not specific to lead technology, but as the previous speakers, I was fortunate to be present in the back seat when the last presentation was being made. The hindrances or the constraint or challenges faced by LED industry was mentioned. One of them was the non-availability of the right technology, non-availability of the right technology at the right price perhaps, and the capital which is required, the initial cost. And these are the issues which any industry is facing, but for lead technology, which is emerging technology, and as far as I know, the technology is limitedly available in the country. The availability of it, the bringing about, getting the technology becomes an issue. In this connection, what I am going to present is the FDI policy of the Government of India, or the technology import policy of the Government of India becomes relevant. I mean, these policies have evolved over a period of time, not a recent one, but for the last 20 years, many steps have been taken by the government to make it more, I would say, user-friendly in the sense. So, I start with just a very small, Indian economic status, which says that the total GDP in India at the PP terms is around 4.5 trillion, which is the third largest in the world. I mean, it has become so in the last 10-15 years because of the high growth maintained during the last 10 years, as you all know better than me perhaps. And the Indian economy has grown also at the rate of 8-9% for till 2011. Of course, the last 2 years we have seen a slightly slowdown in the growth, but we feel that this is only a temporary phenomenon, and which shortly we're recovering and will be back on the high track growth trajectory very shortly. And this is not supported by the government figures, but this is a result of the various surveys or the expectation of the top consultant in the world who would say that yes, Indian economy will continue to grow at a very fast rate. As you say, the source I mentioned is the PwC here. This is the 12th plan which is undergoing at the moment by the Government of India. The average growth rate which was maintained during the 11th plan is mentioned on the left side, and by 2016 and 70 the expected growth rate in the main sectors. Of course, you must be surprised to how we will reach this 10% magic figures in the manufacturing sector when we are going around. It's a flat figure growth in the last few quarters. Of course, but there are steps which are being taken by the government to revive the manufacturing sector in India, and DIPP is very much involved in this in terms of the announcement of national manufacturing policy. And the services sector in any case has done very well during the last 15 years, and we will continue to do well because of this inner strength that we have in terms of the technical qualified person having science and mathematics background. So agriculture, of course, is still about 60% people are dependent on it, but its share in the national economy has been coming down like any other developed economy. That's the very common thing. And what makes India an attractive investment destination? As I mentioned about the technical manpower available here, science graduates and other discipline. We have very stable democratic institution which makes it more conducive or more friendly to a foreign investor. Why I am talking about foreign investment is because all these sectors, lead included, is where we require a lot of investment. And domestic investment, of course, is one part of it, but that can never be complete or sufficient for the growth that we propose to achieve in the next 10-15 years. That is why we say that the foreign direct investment capital as well as technology is essential for our growth, and we will continue to try to facilitate the investment flow from the foreign major sources of the capital from all over the world. The another reason is that we are still one of the fastest growing economy, as you said, that presently it is around 5% growth, but that's also a healthy trend given the scenario. It is, I mentioned around 5%, but we, as I said earlier, we expect to go back to faster growth rate than. See, our FDI policy, or for that matter, the entire reform process has evolved during the last 20-22 years, which you all know it started in 1991, and one of the objective was to integrate the Indian economy with the global economy and make it a bigger player. See, for example, when about 15 years back, our share in the international trade was something like 0.5%. Now, India around 2% of the total global trade India today shares. So is the other parameters if you look at. Now, to achieve that, what government has done, I mean, of course, started with 1991, but this is a continuous process. It moves on even today. Government has to working on that. Is the decontrol of industry. As I go further, I will explain it. It's mostly because ours was a controlled economy in the sense the licensing requirement were there. Now, for manufacturing sector, licensing requirement has almost all done with. There are only 3 or 4 activity which requires industrial license. That too in defense, explosive or hazardous chemicals. All others activities, you don't need government permission to set up a unit in terms of the industrial license or any other thing. You simply have to file an intention. Investment procedure simplification is another thing that earlier all foreign direct investment coming into the country needed approval of the government, one authority or the other. Now, almost 90% of the activities do not require any permission from the government to bring in the foreign capital. I mean, there are 2 processes. One is the automatic route, another is the approval route. The automatic route covers almost 95% of the activity. There are about few activities which are mentioned, and particularly all the manufacturing sector, except defense, is under automatic route. That you have to bring in foreign investment from the source you have identified, and that too you don't have to pre-inform the government. You have to inform the government within 30 days of getting the remittances. So that is simplification of promotion of FDI. Of course, we have been advocating it. Exchange control, convertibility has been brought in, taxes, rationalization, and public sector disinvestment. That is the control. Now earlier there used to be many sectors which were reserved for the public sector. Now government sector that means. Now today only 2 activities are reserved for the government sector. One is railway transport, another is generation of atomic energy. All other activities can be taken up by the private sector, including arms and ammunition manufacturing. This is in short. Most sectors, including manufacturing activities, permitted up to 100% FDI under automatic route, no prior approval required. That is 100% foreign company subsidiary can be set up here for management without any approval for taking up. There are certain activities, I would say activity, not manufacturing, because there are service sectors, they are more of that nature, which requires government approval through Foreign Investment Promotion Board. And they have been listed in the foreign direct investment policy. About 28 activities are there which require government approval or has some equity caps, like defense has 26%, banking 49 to 74%, and like insurance 26%, like that. So that way the regime has been simplified and made more user friendly or investor friendly. This is again a repetition of what I have written in short in the last slide. Here it is that who can bring in money. I mean, earlier it was only a company which has to be formed in India which can receive the FDI. Company registered, incorporated under Companies Act. Now even a limited liability partnership firm can bring in. Of course they have certain restrictions compared to a company. Still they are there, but that can be brought in. It can be a joint venture or a wholly owned subsidiary depending on the sector. As I say, sector is more important because the policy is sector specific or specific activity, not concerned with location or the ownership or other things. There is still a small list of items which we do not permit FDI at all, and that is you mentioned the gambling, betting, more for social and health reasons like lottery, cigarettes, or atomic energy. As I said, it is under the government control. All other sectors, there are certain activity I mentioned earlier, about 28 activities which are either under government route or there is equity cap. These are called restricted activities. But in terms of manufacturing activity, out of these 28, I think there is only one, that is defense production. All others which are not listed in the policy, you can take it as under automatic route. I mean, it may not be mentioned there under automatic route. People have often confused that what is the policy in that sector. But the policy very clearly says that the activity is not mentioned in the table means it is open. So that is, it is more based on negative list rather than the positive list. And as I said that this policy liberalization or reforms is a continuous process which have been going on for the last 20 years. It will continue for many years now because we have to achieve that level. And some of the recent developments or the announcement by the government in this regard are mentioned. I have just given you. See, one of them is the technology import. See, earlier they used to, it was a requirement that you seek government approval if the royalty payment more than 5% or lump sum payment to your foreign collaborator more than $2 million required government approval. As on today, there is no requirement of government approval for payment of any amount in terms of FEMA, of course, under restriction, under current account restriction. So that is a major decision which was taken in 2009 or 10, right? Then consolidation of FDI policy. It is simply a simplification process. What has happened earlier, all the policy announcements were in terms of press note 1, 2, 3 of this year, 1 again. Now, it was not available at one place in a one book. Now this entire thing has been consolidated, and consolidated FDI policy every year is updated based on the decision taken during the last. It is available at the website of our department also. And at one place you can see it, the entire policy. Now the limit which required some approval of the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, which was earlier rupees 600 crores. That means cases approved by FIPB used to go to the CCEA for approval if the total amount of FDI was exceeding rupees 6 crore. This limit has also been increased to rupees 1200 crores. So now bigger projects can come without the approval of CE. There was another condition very irritating for foreign investor, that if one foreign company already has a joint venture or a subsidiary in India, if he wants to set up another in the same field or related field, it requires government approval even if that activity is under automatic route. So that has been done with. Now there are no such restriction. It was done about 5 years back and has been implemented. And this, as I mentioned, the FDI is permitted not only in a company but also in LLP forms. These are the exemption, because now real estate activity is another activity where there are certain restrictions. So what government permits is the FDI in construction activity, construction development project, with certain condition of the minimum area or the minimum area to be developed and all, and the minimum capital that is to be brought in. Now those things have also been relaxed over the last couple of years. The more decisions have been taken, as you know, these are the very talked about decision of the government about FDI in single brand retail trading, multi-brand retail trading, and the broadcasting sector in FM radio and other things has been liberalized over the years. And last one is the foreign airlines. Although 49% was earlier also permitted, foreign investment in civil aviation sector, but no foreign airlines can participate in an Indian Airlines, I mean in terms of equity participation. Now that has been removed, that condition, and in fact the two major decisions which you must have seen in the newspaper are Jet Etihad and the recent one Air Asia. I mean both cases have been approved by the government finally for this. As far as the single brand retail trading is concerned, I mean it's not just in the policy but actual implementation is about 60 proposals have already been cleared by FIPB for setting up single brand retail trading. Of course the multi-brand retail trade is slowly picking up. People are still considering because there are certain conditionalities attached to it. This is in general, gives the idea of what activity is under automatic route. This is the general activity. Another is particularly in infrastructure sector. I mean, because infrastructure is one area where the government India requires massive investment, and It is estimated that for the next 5 years we will require $1 trillion. That's a big amount. But it is these areas where we require maximum investment: the power generation, roads, bridges, ports, hotels, townships, greenfield airport, of course, because greenfield airport is another thing which is under automatic route. No permission is required for bringing in FDI. So that is, I have particularly mentioned these because this area is where we require the maximum investment. And as a result of what policy announcement, liberalization and simplification of the process, see, today India is one of the most attractive destinations. If you go by some of the survey, they are in some sector they are second or third. Overall, we are the second most attractive destination said to be. It is in terms of the actual FDI received, of course, we are still at 14 number because USA, China and UK, they come much earlier. Global inflows, if you look at is FDI during the last year was about 1350 billion. Out of that, India got 26. Last year it was a lower figure. The best was that India achieved was couple of years back was 47 billion. But still, if you talk in that percentage, around 2% of the total global FDI flow came to this country, which I think is a good performance. And this the ranking of the who are coming behind, above India in the list. As you can see, they are the US, China, Hong Kong, Belgium, Brazil, and like this. Large country, it will look at US, China, and I would not like to count British Virgin Island because they are mostly routes for the investment in, I would say, France, Australia. Of course, we hope to be higher in the rank very shortly. This you can see there are two columns. I would like to explain that the investment, as it is called, calculated internationally, is the reinvestment earning by local companies also treated as a foreign investment if it is held by a parent a foreign company. Now, if calculating that, I have given you the figure up to 2012 only, that what I said earlier, about 47 billion was received in the year 2011-12. This is the best performance by India as far as FDI receipt is concerned. And the blue one is the actual equity flow which came from abroad. So that is why there are two columns. One is the actual investment which came, another is reinvestment earnings. If you look at the graph, it is certain so a very positive trend. Route-wise FDI, as I mentioned, there are two routes. One is automatic, another is approval route. Start with 1996-97. If we look at 75% came through the approval route, and look at 2011-12, 9% came through approval route. That shows the extent of liberalization done over the years. More and more sectors are open, and hence more and more FDI has come through the automatic route. So that is a indicator of the relaxed policy. Just to update you with the latest figures, FDI inflows during this current financial year, we have received over $16.8 billion. This is not very satisfactory in my personal opinion. We are still lagging behind. We are capable of getting around, this is only 6 months figure, so even if we interpolate it for the whole year, it may be around 35 billion tons. But we are capable of getting 50 billion or more. I think shortly we will achieve that. And the total FDI received since the year 2000 till year was 306 million. And the sources, as also mentioned, Mauritius, Singapore, UK, Japan, and US India. And just a very small, which I have already covered. These are the activity which still have required industrial license: cigars and cigarettes, electronic aerospace, defense, industrial explosive, and hazardous chemical. If you look at above there, what I have mentioned is the reservation of production by, used to be many items reserved for small scale sector, making it not possible for the large unit to take up those manufacturing. It used to be 800 items, which have now been reduced to 80, almost insignificant. And this is the technology transfer I mentioned, that there is no approval required for payment of any amount of royalty or lump sum payment to foreign collaborator. This is how it becomes relevant to industry which requires foreign technology. This is general. We require what we have already taken a lot of investment, that is support. And national manufacturing policy, I won't go into detail of it, but It has been announced by the government to boost the manufacturing sector in India, and presently our manufacturing sector amounts to about 15% of the GDP. The idea is to increase to 25% by 2022, and in that process many steps are being taken to make it a more industry friendly, taking on manufacture, and also creating infrastructure, giving incentives, and even creation of a patent pool for some small manufacturer. There are various, I think you can have a look at our website if you are interested in this. And that's all. Thank you very much.